The guy, Rumsfeld had no real constituency left. The Army Times is against him. I think this is dramatic. I think it's very impressive by the president. I think it shows executive authority. And I think he leaves Reid and Schumer and the others in the dust. Yeah, this is a good thing, but...
Except that Democrats will say that this election was a confirmation of what they've been calling for, which is a change of course in Iraq. Vice President Cheney, days before the election, sat down for an interview and was asked the question, if there is a change in the balance of power in Washington, will there be a change in the policy on Iraq? And Vice President Cheney said, everyone knows it, full speed ahead in Iraq. Firing the
full
defense...
speed ahead into a wall.
Firing
and that's the other thing that's an electoral wall. And I remember, I can't remember exactly who wrote this, but somebody said it was as if the president had a death wish. Why did the president embrace Donald Rumsfeld for so long when everybody, again, including his wife, was saying, get rid of this guy? It reminded me of that famous moment back in the 1980s when Ronald Reagan kept being told by everybody, including Nancy, to get rid of Reagan. And Reagan's response was for her to get off his back. That was a kind of a clean version of what he told her.
Stubborn man. I mean, I think anything like I've always thought this talk that it's because of his loyalty to people, which is what they want us to think about how he stands by these people. That's a factor, I suppose. But I think he also sees it as an admission of mistakes whenever he lets someone go. But I'll tell you, if I worked for Bush, the last thing I'd want is for him to go out in public and say I'm doing a heck of a job, because that means about a week or two later you're going to get fired.
Hold on one second, Matt. I want you all to listen to what Nancy Pelosi had to say a few hours ago. Of course, she's House Minority Leader now. She's going to be Speaker in early January. She touched on a possible change in direction within the Bush administration. Listen.
There has to be a signal of a change of direction on the part of the president. And one good place he could start is a place where not only the Democrats and large numbers of the American people, but the voices of the military have spoken out, and that is to change the civilian leadership at the Pentagon. That would signal an openness to new, fresh ideas on the subject.
Well, ask and ye shall receive. George W. Bush proving finally that he's a uniter and not a divider.
Well, clearly, if the election did say one thing about it did say change course in Iraq, and it did say Rumsfeld must go, but I do believe, Joe, by the rapidity, drama of the response by the president, doing something necessary, and doing it to his own advantage. This is an excellent move. Timing of it, the replacement is outstanding. I think it's going to get high marks all the way around. And I do believe it's going to take the huge election headlines we saw in the New York Times today. That's yesterday's news now. Rumsfeld's tomorrow's news.
You know what's so interesting about this, Nora, and you were covering the Hill back in 1994 when Republicans took over. I remember the first press conference Bill Clinton had, and Craig, you were there too. Remember the first press conference Bill Clinton had the next day? The guy looked stunned. He looked as if somebody had taken a taser to him. 4 months later, Bill Clinton was holding that famous April press conference where he was saying, I'm still relevant. The one thing you've got to say about the Bush administration, following up on what Pat said about communication, ruthlessly efficient in responding to this crisis.
Politically, yes.
Politically.
Some will argue that they're inefficient in other matters. The Democrats would.
They're very good at managing the news.
I'm talking about managing the news. And again, it took Bill Clinton 4 to 5 months before he regained his traction. It's taken them 4 to 5 hours.
I mean, if they could manage a war as well as they manage the news, we'd be out of Iraq
They'd be in good shape. Exactly. And they would have greeted us with flowers, right?
This president, whether you love him or hate him, is decisive. And he has moved forward and was apparently led by his new White House Chief of Staff, Bolton, to make this decision. From our reporting at NBC News, what we know is that, of course, this decision to get rid of Secretary Rumsfeld at least was discussed within the last couple days before the election, that there was a disagreement between the political people and Judge Bolton, who is the White House Chief of Staff, and Vice President Cheney, who wanted Rumsfeld to stay. That decision was then put off until after the election, and then, lo and behold, what happened today. But it appears once again, I think, the whole subtext, the important subtext of today, not only that Rumsfeld is gone, and this may mean a new change in Iraq, but what this means that Vice President Cheney, who apparently for the past several years of the Iraq War has been the one person that has convince the president to keep keep Secretary Rumsfeld is no longer in the confidence of the president on this matter.
And I was going to say, Pat Buchanan, we should all have a guardian angel like Dick Cheney, because seriously, Dick Cheney was confronted by everybody in the administration, as Nora said, the Chief of Staff, Andy Card, Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, when he was handed his walking papers. Why did he say?
You go over the graffiti with you? It's my graffiti.